Okay, today we're going to learn about angle and line relationships. That you do not have a vocab sheet for this, at least not yet. So don't worry about writing anything down, but I do need you to pay attention because you're going to see this throughout your homework, and it's mainly a vocab-based homework. So just make sure you're listening carefully, and we'll try to go through this quickly. Just, of course, repeat after me whenever I say a word, just like usual. All right, here we go. The very first word for today is vertical angles. Everyone? Okay, so here's what your book says vertical angles are. They are two pairs of opposite angles formed by two intersecting lines. And then what's most important is the angles formed are congruent. So basically, if you have something that looks like this, no matter what angles it forms, it's just a couple of lines that are intersecting each other. Vertical angles, those are examples of vertical angles. Okay, they're just kind of like opposite of each other, across from each other. Another pair would be this one right here and this angle right here are vertical angles as well. All right, our next word, our phrase is adjacent angles. Everyone? Okay, so here's what your book says it is. It says these are two angles that have the same vertex, share a common side, and do not overlap. Okay, so for example, if you take a look here, these two angles right here, you have two intersecting lines again. However, adjacent angles, they have the same vertex. Okay, so they share that point right there. They share a common side, so it's like they're neighbors. Okay, and it says they do not overlap. So just side-by-side angles with that follow those three sets of directions are adjacent angles. Okay, the next word or phrase are complementary angles. Everyone? All right, so an example of a special kind of adjacent angle, actually one of an example of adjacent angles, a special adjacent angles would be complementary angles. These are two angles. It says two angles are complementary if the sum of their measures is 90 degrees. Okay, so actually you have one set of adjacent angles like this here. There's two adjacent angles that are complementary, but also complementary angles could look like this. It could be two separate angles, but as long as the measurements of each would add up to be 90 degrees, they would be complementary angles. All right, and then very similar to complementary angles are supplementary angles. Everyone? Okay, these, it says two angles are supplementary if the sum of their measures is 180 degrees. So they're very similar to complementary, but they measure 180 degrees. So here's a couple of sets here. I don't know why there's that little break there, but just pretend like that's one straight line. Okay, these are adjacent angles, this angle here and this angle here, okay, that are supplementary angles. All right, so together they'd add up to 180 degrees, or basically it's almost like together it'd create a straight line. Here's another set of supplementary angles that are not adjacent, but supplementary angles. So two separate angles that add up, or would add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so here we go. Brace yourself because it's going to slowly get a little more challenging, and we have a couple more pages. So here we go. Okay, so the next slide here, the word is, I'll go faster this because I'm pretty sure you guys know what this is, perpendicular lines. Everyone? Okay, so perpendicular lines, the book says they are lines that intersect to form a right angle. That's pretty important. They form a right angle. So if you have two lines that are intersecting, kind of looks like an intersection of a street for the most part, right? But the main part is it forms a right angle, or actually in this case, of course, four right angles. Okay, 4 90-degree angles. Okay, probably when you were in elementary school, going along with perpendicular lines, you learned the other set of lines, and that is parallel lines. Everyone? Okay, parallel lines are two lines that are in the same plane that do not intersect. So of course they, I don't know, I always remember teachers in elementary school saying that it's railroad tracks, so it's kind of like that, right? But they just go on straight forever, they never intersect. So those are parallel lines, okay? Now, kind of building off of parallel lines, there is a word that goes with that that you will need to know, and that is a transversal, everyone. All right, so here's what a transversal is. It's a line that intersects two parallel lines to form 8 angles. So here's what it actually looks like. You have two parallel lines. This line right here is a transversal. Okay, and this is a huge basis of today's lesson, so listen carefully. Transversal, it creates 1, 2, 3, 4 angles there, and 5, 6, 7, the 8th angles there. So that's what it means by a total of 8 angles. Okay, so that line right there is a transversal that crosses two parallel lines. All right, and then here comes the last slide here, and it is based off of a transversal and two parallel lines. So here we go. All right. So here's what you need to know is that all the following we're going to talk about, all these angles are congruent. All right, meaning they have the same measure, just like vertical angles. Okay, so here we go. All right, the next phrase is alternate interior angles. Everyone? Okay, so these are, your book says, non-adjacent angles found on opposite sides of the transversal. All right, so non-adjacent, meaning not right next to each other. That's where the word, of course, alternate helps you remember that. Now, interior means, of course, you have your two parallel lines. Your interior angles are inside of the parallel lines. That's what it means by interior angles. All right, so alternate on the opposite side instead of next to each other, opposite side, interior, inside of the parallel lines, angles. Okay, and those are, of course, again, congruent. All right, the next special set is this, alternate exterior angles. Everyone? Okay, your book says these are, again, non-adjacent exterior angles found on opposite sides of the transversal. Okay, so very similar. Alternate, meaning that's not on the same side of the transversal. It's alternate, so on each other side. Exterior, though, means, remember the last one was interior angles, inside the parallel lines. Exterior means outside the parallel lines. So these two are examples of alternate exterior angles. Okay, you can even, we didn't talk about it before, but you can even say that this angle here and this angle here are also alternate exterior angles. Okay, going back to alternate interior angles, right? These two angles are alternate interior angles with each other. Okay, just like these two are. Okay, so our third special set of angles coming off a transversal is corresponding angles. Everyone? All right, so corresponding angles look like they are, I'm sorry, the book says it's this. It says they are angles that have the same position on two different parallel lines cut by a transversal. All right, so here's how I like to think about it. Pretend like that, those are two intersecting lines, right? And then if you, instead of those two intersecting lines, if you took those two intersecting lines, it's in the same position. So those two intersecting lines, as if they were different, those two intersecting lines. See how it's like on the bottom right, and that one's on the bottom right? Okay, that's what it means by corresponding angles. Angles that have the same position on two different parallel lines cut by a transversal. So those are congruent as well. All right, so you may have already seen it, but here's what you probably really need after this whole vocab is done here. Here's what you really need to probably write down in your paper, and that is use pages 494 and 495 on your homework. All right, all of this is on those two pages, so and you're going to need to go back and forth until you get to memorize these things, because they're really, really important and they will help you. All right. Okay, so if you haven't already done so, go ahead and grab a piece of paper and your book. All right, and let's go ahead and let's get started on some examples here. Okay, So go ahead and make sure that you label your paper correctly. All right, name, date, period. Okay, assignment number is great. All right, and then if you haven't already done so, okay, you're going to want to flip your book to, let's start on page 497. Actually, we probably could start on 498. Okay, so, all right, let's go ahead and let's take a look at 498. Let's take a look at problem number 15. Problem number 15, all right? So in your book, I'm going to draw a really quick, it won't be perfect, but a really quick drawing. All right, these are lines, so they have arrows on the end, not line segments. And I'm going to do my best to make these look parallel. Not bad, I guess. All right. Now, here's what it has. It has, this is line G. It's like an italicized lowercase g. This is line F. And this is line T. Okay? And it gives us different angles. On the bottom half, it's 1, 3, 7, and 5. On that top half is 2, 4, 8, and 6. Okay? And the directions are really important. So on page 498 at the top there, it says, in the figure to the right, which is this figure here, it says line F, and that's assigned is parallel with line G, and line T is the transversal. All right? So it's kind of stating the obvious. Okay? Now, it says, if measure of angle 6 is equal to 52.6 degrees, find the measure of each angle. Explain your reasoning. All right? So, it says that, I tell you what, I'm going to label this right here. Angle 6 is 52.6 degrees. All right? So, they're asking on number 15, what is the measure of angle 3? All right? So, here's what I'm going to take a look at. So if this is angle 6, I need to know what is angle 3. Well, this, I don't need to go any further than the vocabulary. All right, and the vocabulary says that these two being parallel, 3 and 6 are both inside of the parallel lines. And so that means they're interior, and if I remember right, there is a word with the interior, they're alternate interior angles. Remember, alternate being on the other side of that transversal. So alternate interior angles. And remember, the rule of that is that they are congruent. So the measure of angle 3, my answer would be 52.6 degrees. And if I was going to write steps on this, that'd be step 1 is to write down, after taking a look at your vocab, write down your answer. And then step 2, though, is you need to make sure, don't forget, you need to back it up with your vocabulary. So all you need to put is something like angle 6 and angle 3 are alternate interior angles. All right, and those two is our answer. All right, so here we go. I'm going to let you guys try this one out. Okay, same page, same off the same diagram. Okay, I want you guys to try out problem number 20. Problem number 20. Try that out. I'll give you guys 1 minute. Check in with you in about 1 minute. Okay, don't forget, if you don't remember them, use pages 494 and 495 for the vocab to help you. All right, 1 minute starting now. Okay, 30 seconds. Go ahead and turn to your neighbor and share your answer. Go. Okay, so probably going through that, you realized that that one was a half a step longer than this last one. It required you to do a couple of things. So here we go. So problem number 20. Okay, it says it wants to know what is angle 1. Okay, now I could probably think of like 3 to 4 ways right off the top of my head that I can solve this problem. One of the ways would be that if I'm taking a look at angle 6, okay, I know that angle 6 and angle 5 are like twins based off of these two parallel lines, meaning that they are corresponding angles. And I can go that route and say, well, that means that angle 5 is 52.6 degrees as well. Now, after I realize that angle 5 is 52.6 degrees, that's obviously not my answer yet, right? I can then say, well, angle 5 and angle 1, which is what I'm looking for, they are, if I take a look here, they are two lines that are created, or I should say make up this straight angle here, which is 180 degrees. These two are supplementary angles. So if I was to do that, right, I would say 180 degrees, all right, minus 52.6 degrees will give me how much angle 1 is. So do a little borrowing here. 7, 10, 9, 10. So 10 minus 6 is 4. 9 minus 7 is 2. And 7 minus 5, I'm sorry, 9 minus 2 is 7. 7 minus 5 is 2. And so I would get 27.4 sorry, forgot the 1. It's like, that looks a little different there. So 127.4 degrees. So 127.4 degrees is my answer. However, don't forget, okay, we need to explain this, and this explanation is a little longer. We would say something like angle 6 and angle 5 are corresponding, corresponding, thought I misspelled that, corresponding angles. And angle 5 and angle 1 are supplementary angles. And that, along of course with my work, would back up mathematically my answer. And there we go. If you're wondering, I don't know if any of you guys have done it this way, so you could have said you could have started with angle 6 and angle 8 are supplementary, and found out that that means angle 8 was 127.4 degrees, and then realized, oh, angle 1 and angle 8 are alternate exterior angles, which means they're congruent. So you could have found it out that way. Another thing I was thinking was, there's a lot of different ways. You could have said 4, and this is a little extra, but 4 and 6 are vertical, so that's equal to each other. And then you would have said, well then, okay, 4, I tell you what, instead of even doing that, instead of going that route, but there's a number of different ways. You could have labeled all of these and used all of our rules, all of our vocabulary to find out the different degrees. All right, so let's go ahead and let's try the next one. All right, let's flip over to page 498 if we're not already there. We should be. Let's take a look at problem 21. All right, 21 looks like this. You have a 90-degree angle. Of course, this angle is coming off like that. That line, or line segment, that ray, I should say. This is F, point G, point H, point J, and then it has a little 1 here, which means angle 1. Okay, so it says if angle, the measure, that should say that, I'm sorry, the measure of angle FGH is 165 degrees, find the measure of angle 1. So FGH, this whole thing right here, they say is 165 degrees. If I look at here, they want to know what's angle 1. Well, guys, these are adjacent angles. They're not special, they're not complementary or supplementary, but what I do know is this angle here is 90 degrees. So I could solve this by saying, I could say angle 1 plus 90 degrees, right, is equal to what they told us the whole angle measure is, 165 degrees. So if I want to treat this like a variable, right, I would just subtract 90 from both sides and say angle 1 is 75 degrees. All right. So it's all about observing the angles. Find out what's special about them, what part of the vocabulary goes with that. You can even say that's step 1 in this case. Observe them, know how they're related to each other. Okay, read the directions. Step 2, of course, is use that information and create your equation. And then step 3, of course, is solve that equation to get your answer. Okay. All right, you see it. I'm going to go ahead and I'll give you guys 2 minutes. Go ahead and try out problem 22 on 498. Okay, problem 22. If you get finished early, go ahead and move along to the rest of your homework. All right. So 2 minutes. Try problem 22. Go. Okay. All right, 30 seconds. Go ahead and turn to your neighbor and go ahead and share what you got and how you got it. All right, go. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Taking a look at this, right? What I said up here, the first step is just kind of take a look, see how they're related. There's nothing special about them. They're not complementary, supplementary, but that's okay. What they do tell us in the directions is angle QRS, which is this whole angle here, this whole thing. Angle QRS, that whole thing is equal to 158 degrees. Okay, and what I do know is that these two adjacent angles, QRT and TRS, together are going to equal that larger angle. So what that means is I'm going to go ahead and build my equation. So we have 8x plus 8 plus the 2x is equal to what they said was 158 degrees. Now, this is all positive value. With that said, I can actually just drop my parentheses when solving this. All right. Don't have to change any signs or use any distributor property. What I'm then looking at is I can turn around and combine like terms. We have 8x and a positive 2x, which gives us 10x. So 10x, and then bring my 8 down, my positive 8 equals 158. Then it's a two-step equation. Subtract an 8 from both sides. Get 10x equals 150, and divide both sides by 10. And that leaves us with, squeeze it in here, x equals, of course, 15. Let me write that over here. X equals 15. Okay. Now, I do want to share this with you because you have to watch for this. If you got that, that's wonderful. That is the wrong answer. That's not the complete answer, though. So be careful on those like that because they may ask you for x, but x might not be the angle. Because the question says, find the measure of angle TRS. So if you take a look at TRS, x is 15, right? But the angle is 2x. So realistically, what we've got is 2 times 15. So the measure angle, or the angle measure of TRS is 30 degrees, and that's your final answer. So watch for that. Okay, so looking through, there will be some other challenging problems on there you'll need to be careful of, but for the most part, all of them are very much related to these. Use those 2 pages I told you about, 494 and 495, to your advantage. Just keep flipping back and forth. Don't try to do any guessing. It'll take a little while, but after a while, they'll become easy for you. You'll learn how things are congruent and the rules of them, so you'll need that to use along with, of course, your algebraic equations to go ahead and solve the angles. So, all right, go ahead and get started.